This conference will now be recorded.
All right, Peter, over to you, and curious to hear more about Headless in 2021.
Thank you, Janus. So let me just briefly introduce myself. My name is Petr Palas. If you don't know me yet, I'm the CEO and founder of Kentico software. And Kentico is a special CMS vendor because we have two CMS products, a traditional digital experience platform called Kentico Experience and a new cloud-based headless CMS product called Kentico Content. And today I will talk about the hurdles to CMS, to headless CMS adoption that we see in the market and our recommendations to overcome them. As you probably saw in the past couple of years, the headless CMS concept has become largely popular, and what we see is that this popularity is largely driven by developers, but at the end, the adoption by the end users isn't necessarily always that great. I'm not talking necessarily about our customers, but in general, the feedback that we see from the market is that there are numerous failed implementations of headless CMS where the business users, the content editors who want to use the headless CMS aren't as happy with headless CMS compared to the traditional CMS that they previously used. So, as I mentioned, that headless CMS adoption is really driven by developers today. We see this very rarely that a CMO or some business leader would come to us asking for a headless CMS. Typically, it starts in the IT team or in some digital team where the enterprise architect or some other technical leader comes with the idea, why don't we switch to a headless CMS? They see a big advantage of headless CMS supporting modern technologies, being cloud-based, enabling API-first approach, and microservices-based architecture, and front-end frameworks, and so on. So this is a very interesting value proposition for the developers. However, when the project or the implementation of the CMS comes to the end, now they face the surprise that their content editors aren't necessarily that happy. And that content editor may be like, but how do I edit my homepage here? So that often leads to disillusionment about headless CMS. And I believe this is not necessary. And this disillusion often happens because something wrong happened on the path to the implementation. The biggest reason why this happens is that headless CMS really requires a different mindset and a different way, a different approach to how you implement it. In the traditional CMS world, you typically started with something like what you see on the left side, with some content tree that helps you organize the navigation of your website with pages. And then you could click some page, go to the inside editing, maybe have some drag and drop page builder that allows you to manipulate various widgets and so on. So this was very intuitive for the business users, and it empowered the business users to do what they need without a developer's assistance. However, when you give them the keys to the headless CMS, what they often see is just a flat list of content items, something like what you see on the right side. And this may be very overwhelming for the business users, because suddenly they feel like, okay, so there are like 10,000 content items here in some list. I have no idea where to start, which item I should edit, how to find what actually represents my homepage or my blog post. And this becomes really cumbersome experience. But as you will see in this presentation, it doesn't have to be like that. And you can connect or combine the benefits of a headless CMS from the technology standpoint, with a good experience for the business users, and having all the benefits of strongly structured, highly reusable content. I believe that whether it is headless CMS or traditional CMS, it is still the same what we've seen in the past 20 years in the market. Failed CMS projects are more likely to be a result of a poor implementation than a poor CMS. Now, it's not that I would like to have an alibi as a CMS vendor, that I would like to blame someone else, but really, we often see that if something goes wrong with CMS projects, it's rarely an issue with the CMS as such, unless you chose a really better CMS. But more often, it is a result of the implementation team not following the best practices and doing things in a wrong way, and not fully utilizing the possibilities that the CMS offers to them. So here are the 5 mistakes that everybody should avoid to ensure a successful headless CMS project, and to make sure that they achieve not only that technology transformation, but that they also get highly positive adoption by the business users. Let me walk you through these 5 points. The first mistake that we often see in these implementation projects is that the technical teams do not involve the content team from the very early of the project. Oftentimes, the project is driven largely by the technical team or digital team, and then just a few weeks before the launch, they realize that they still have lorem ipsum content on their website or in some other projects, such as mobile application or anything else. And so this is usually too late, and at that point they just rush the whole process, and they push their content editors to fill in something so that they don't have a blank website. And really, what we highly recommend to our customers is that they always bring those business users already to the selection process. If you do that, you make sure that the business users understand the goals of the project, the options that they have, and can provide their feedback in terms of what they expect from the CMS. This is probably the best way how to get their buy-in and make sure that they will collaborate with you throughout the project. So the best practice that we've seen is really customers that are doing proof of concept projects. They involve their business users. They see on some typical use cases how the CMS works or doesn't work for these business users, and then they can make a qualified decision about whether this is the right way to go for them. The second mistake that we often see is that people are still ignoring the whole content lifecycle. They still think about the CMS as a content entry tool. So in reality, the whole content lifecycle starts with analysis of your performance. Then you typically create some content calendar or some plan how you want to create the content. Then you move to that actual content creation, which also consists of some collaboration with subject matter experts from some review or approve workflows. It may involve translation of the content, and sometimes this may also involve some third-party tools where that collaboration actually happens outside the CMS. And then you actually publish the content, so you deliver it to different channels, and then you may want to optimize the content, identify how it performs, do some A/B testing, and so on. So this is the whole content lifecycle. The problem is that many organizations focus on just this one step, creating content, and they see CMS as a content entry tool that is often used only by some power users who get inputs by email or through Google Docs or some Excel sheets and copy paste this content into the CMS. This didn't work very well already in the traditional CMS world, and it's even bigger issue in the headless CMS world, where the content is highly structured. So if you want to collaborate on the highly structured content in Google Docs, it becomes quickly a nightmare, especially if your subject matter experts do not have access directly to the CMS. So it's really important that when you think about moving to a new CMS, especially when it is a headless CMS, that you think about the bigger picture, and you think about how are we going to conduct the collaboration, how are we going to enable the subject matter experts and other contributors who create content to actually work directly with the latest version of the structured content in the headless CMS. At the same time, you may want to think about what are the other tools and processes that are connected with the CMS, whether it is, for example, the translation process or workflow process, or, for example, your marketing team may be already using some analytics or content planning tool that you may want, or project management tools that you may want to connect to your CMS, so that you have a really highly connected experience for your users, and so that they don't have to switch and copy and paste data manually between different systems. So this is again an important element that you should consider so that you provide a good experience for your business users. The third mistake that we often see is skipping proper content modeling. Content modeling isn't a new thing, but it becomes really critical in the context of a headless CMS. With traditional web-oriented approach, with traditional CMS, you typically started from the website navigation, the website structure, and then you focused on the design of individual pages. And it was really very much driven by the final design of what you display. With headless CMS, you need to adopt that content first approach and start from content that should ideally exist independently on the presentation. As I will explain later on, it's not always that perfect, but if you want to gain maximum benefits from the headless CMS approach, you should really start thinking about what is that core reusable content that you can use in the long time, that can survive multiple different redesigns, that can be reused across different channels, and so on. So when you want to do this properly, you need to get the content model right at the beginning of the project. And if you're not familiar with content modeling is basically very similar to database modeling. It has some similar concepts, and it's all about identifying the typical content types, and identifying their structures, and identifying maybe some common elements that can be shared across different content types. So for example, here in this example, you have a content type for breakfast, then you have a content type for flat white coffee, and then you may have some shared metadata that are reused or that are used across all content types that represent some food, such as allergens or nutrition information. And even here, you can see that, for example, allergens here are designed as a rich text field. Is it good or is it bad? In some cases, it makes sense to follow the best practices from data modeling and really go deep to a highly normalized data model, or in this case, content model, where anything that is reusable becomes a separate entity or listing that you refer to, rather than using a rich text where someone enters a description of allergens in this case. But in some other cases, it may be actually easier to keep things simple and allow the business users to enter unstructured content just to give them more flexibility. So what is important in this content modeling is that you shouldn't always think about just in that technical realms, but you should also think about what will be the experience for the business users using your content model, because this content model eventually is represented by the user interface, by some content entry form that the business users need to use. And if you go too far away with having a very puristic approach to your content model, it may become cumbersome for the business users because they will get lost in the complexity of your content model. So my advice here is stay very pragmatic when it comes to content modeling. Think about what is really necessary for content reusability, but also think about what impact it has on your business users. We saw this multiple times with first-time headless CMS implementers that they think, okay, we need to be completely headless. We need to take a very puristic approach to content modeling and have everything very nicely done, but then the business users are unhappy about a very complex content model. That brings me to the next point, which is trying to be too much puristic, trying to be 100% channel agnostic. One idea that I often hear, especially from people who heard about Headless CMS, but they never implemented a Headless CMS, is that if you use Headless CMS, you should put there only channel agnostic or channel independent content that can be used for anything. But it never really works like that. It's never like a single piece of content that can be used across any channel and any device. There are always some specifics to certain channels. And again, I believe it's important to be to find the right balance between having reusable content, but at the same time being realistic or pragmatic about how about the needs of specific channels. And in many cases, it's really still about websites. When I look at our customers that use our Headless CMS, I would say absolute majority of customers still have a website as their primary channel, but they want to be ready for the future. They want to have the content reusable across different channels, whether it means across different websites or mobile application, or maybe some more modern channels such as chatbot. But then again, website is really the core for most customers. So let me show some illustration what it may look like in a real world example. I'm using here a demo of our product Kentico content, but it's not for that I would like to promote it. It's really just for the purposes of the illustration. One common concern that I hear from people is that Headless CMS isn't suitable for web specific scenarios, because it doesn't have a concept of pages or navigation and so on. And then I also hear once you start adding the concept of pages, you're moving away from that headless approach, and you're already screwing the whole idea of headless. I don't think it has to be like that, and the approach that you can use is that you can have the pure content item repository with highly reusable content, but then you can extend this content with additional content types or additional metadata that are specific for a particular channel, in this case for the website. So what you can see here is an example of how you can extend a Headless CMS with additional layers that allows you to look at your content as if it was a website, while you at the same time maintain all that content in a fully structured, reusable format. So you can see that you have a preview functionality, and you can actually manipulate that navigation fairly easily. You can navigate through the website by clicking through that content tree and so on. So this mimics what you know from the traditional CMS, which is very easy to understand for the business users, but then you don't lose any benefits of the headless CMS for the technical from the technology standpoint, or for the content reuse. Another example is that you can use the click to edit functionality. There are already multiple headless CMS systems that provide something like this, and in fact, you can probably achieve this with any headless CMS. So if the CMS provides some preview functionality, which is quite common for headless CMSs in these days, you can extend it with displaying only in the preview mode these edit buttons that allow the content editor to click that pencil button and open the editing form representing the given piece of content. This makes it much easier for the business users to find the right content that they want to edit and get their job done. The last point is reliance on developers. Again, it's kind of myth that I often hear about headless CMSs, that you cannot give control over page structure and allow marketers to build, for example, a new headless, a new landing page with a headless CMS. I believe it doesn't have to be like that, and it really depends on how well you implement the headless CMS. Most of the today's headless CMSs provide some support of content components, where you can actually put together a page by combining different content components. In this example, this may be your landing page with some hero image, some featured product, and maybe some call to action. And then you can split this page into specific content components, such as hero image, product, or CPA with their own attributes. And then this is what it looks like in the headless CMS. So when you go to the editor, you can see all these sections of the page. You can sort them and change their order, and you can easily add additional section to the page. So this gives the business users the power to create new pages without relying on developers. Unfortunately, we see that oftentimes this is forgotten during the implementation project, and the pages are very much hard-coded by the developers, and then the business users feel like, okay, but we are so limited now. Every time we need to create a new page, we need to go to the developer, and it's not as flexible as we were used to with a traditional CMS. And again, this is an example of that it doesn't have to be like that, and you can do a better job for your business users if you do this right. So the key takeaways and recommendations. First of all, it's important that you involve your content team very early in your project, ideally already in that CMS selection process. We also highly recommend that you start small and maybe start with some proof of concept or with some small project, and then you learn and iterate, and only after you feel comfortable with your headless CMS implementation, you move ahead to taking bigger projects and moving it maybe as your central source of tools for your content across the organization. But it's not really a good idea to start directly with a big replatforming project. And third, I would recommend that you stay pragmatic and you avoid over-engineering. While it is important to follow some best practices and create a highly reusable content so that you can use it for many other purposes in the future without rewriting it. At the same time, you always need to balance this with more pragmatic approach and think about how can I structure the content that is in a way that is also usable for my business users. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you want to ask anything, we have space now, or you can also reach out to me at this email address.
Thank you very much, Peter. If you don't mind just going back one slide, and then I will ask my question. Dean Barker mentioned your approach in his latest edition of Squirrel Notes just before Christmas. Would you mind commenting on your perspective, Peter? I just posted the link in the chat.
Yes, thank you. So Dean's post note was related to the fact that we have two products, one traditional CMS and one headless CMS that also now has like web-specific capabilities. I would say it's important always to think about where you come from and where your users come from. How we think about our two products is that with Kentico experience, our traditional solution, and it's also a digital experience platform. It's not just a CMS, it's also e-commerce and digital marketing solution. How we think about it is that it very much resonates with people who prefer the traditional way of doing things, and they don't see that value yet for them to move on to a headless approach. They typically want to do primarily websites, and they don't want to give up their, I would say, page first or website first approach. With Kentico content, we cater primarily to the customers who want to go headless for both technology but also content reusability reasons. And these customers start from this point as the starting point, but at some point they will come to realization that they also need to better support their business users for the web-specific scenarios, and that's where we provide an add-on. So these are like little differences that actually make a big difference overall. So it's often more about the philosophy of the CMS than the functionality itself. That's also why we see so many different CMS vendors in the industry.
Great. We have a minute left. Any closing comments, remarks from anybody else? Quick takes, feedback? All right. I'll just say thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for doing it. Thanks for kicking us off on the topic of headless. We'll have more sessions next week, but thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for now. I'll share the notes, the slides, link to Dean's post, and we'll talk soon and hopefully be able to meet in person later in the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.